enthusiasm. He's also very much less intelligent than Tony Blair. He absolutely lacks Blair's skills at communication. He's wooden.
We're jet ready. What you're going to hear will really shock you. Starmer strives to control the situation at all costs. It is shameful that an ex-lawyer does not care about people. He spat on all of us and our desires. Historian David Starkey exposed it and destroyed it. You have to watch this.
The enormous difference is Blair had flair. Starmer has no flair whatever. Moreover, Blair was elected genuinely on, I didn't share in it. I mean, let me reminisce a little how I reacted on election night 1997. I knew what was coming, and I spent most of it with my head down a lavatory, being exceedingly sick after drowning my sorrows in champagne. I knew what was coming, but at least there was that sense of openness, of something different. What Starmer represents, although he's constantly used the word change, he simply represents an intensification of what we had before. The Tories did it half-heartedly. He does all these dreadful things with positive enthusiasm.
Starmer did everything that was necessary to come to power. Unsurprisingly, many conversations boil down to Blair. When it comes to today's politics, many wonder if Starmer is the new Blair. Starmer is dealing with a government that provoked an economic crisis, and in this respect the situation is similar to 1997. Today, people believe less that everything will only get better. In fact, in one important but ignored comment, Starmer said that if the next government does not prove that it can make a difference, then this national pessimism will turn into a kind of apathy. We have had 15 years of stagnant living standards, a decrease in the number of homeowners, and a deterioration in the quality of public services. Even Brexit, which was supposed to bring the system out of its torpor, seems to have changed little. Immigration continues to grow. The economy is stagnating. Taxes are rising. We are tired of the government's inaction and its stupid decisions.
Enthusiasm. He's also very much less intelligent than Tony Blair. He absolutely lacks Blair's skills at communication. He's wooden. He's dull. He's a second-rate mind. It's even worse than somebody like Yvette Cooper. You know, Yvette Cooper's quite extraordinary. She contrives both to be mousy and schoolmistressy at the same time. It's very difficult. What else can you say? What moments like this demand is a degree of open-mindedness of, yes, slam down hard on the violence, but say, as Blair brilliantly did, I feel your pain, as Clinton did, I feel your pain. I mean, what was striking about both Blair and Clinton, not unlike Hillary, unlike Starmer, they understood their opponent.
By the way, Starmer knows that he is boring, but he does not want to change anything in himself, but on the contrary closes everyone's mouth who thinks so. He got angry at members of his shadow cabinet for describing him as a boring politician. He angrily urged his colleagues to stop telling reporters that he was boring. Recently, more and more people have accused him of not being able to clearly articulate what the Labour Party stands for now, just as he is not able to arouse public enthusiasm for his leadership.
Starmer immediately resorts to the iron fist, the mere language of the policeman. Can you imagine a prime minister advertising that he was a public prosecutor? This sounds like something out of Eastern Europe, doesn't it? A chief of staff who was the enforcer within the cabinet office, Sue Gray, with an awful smell of Northern Irish politics around her. In other words, it's this extraordinary partisanship, whereas Blair, I think, was deeply partisan, but was he clever at concealing it?
The riots became an unexpected national crisis. On the one hand, Starmer had to restore the rule of law and public order in relation to the rioters, but he did it too radically. He called for an army that used brute force against people who were not aggressive. He made a large number of arrests, and the courts began to impose disproportionately harsh sentences. And these people were given places in prisons in the first place. What an absurdity. Derek Drummond was sentenced to 3 years, despite the fact that he surrendered to the police and pleaded guilty. Instead of putting dangerous criminals in jail, he puts ordinary hooligans in jail. He must find ways to reduce, rather than inflame, public concerns about migration.
They'll continue exactly as they are. What could be? Has there been a worse beginning to a government? And also, it's the deliberate lying The utter clumsy transparency of the thing. Again, his Downing Street speech with all this language of being unburdened by doctrine of public service and all the rest of it. It makes Margaret Thatcher's invocation of St. Francis of Assisi look like a job description. The terrible thing is, it leads constantly to contempt, to distrust, to that sense we're being lied to.
Starmer cuts Britain's rearmament program alive. The program to create a British sixth-generation Tempest fighter in partnership with Japan and Italy is under threat due to a review of defence policy towards the maximum reduction of defence contract. But British military analysts express serious concerns that the struggle will conclude that it is not worth the investment. The price of the Tempest program is £12 billion. There is nowhere to take the money. There is a hole in the UK budget. During the 14 years of the Conservatives' rule, gigantic budgets of various weapons were mastered, and all of them turned out to be formal projects, which greatly contributed to the formation of a gigantic state budget deficit. So, the British Ministry of Defence wasted £1.4 billion on the creation of advanced reconnaissance drones. This is a complete disaster.
We speak now. Unfortunately, the decision was taken that you simply shut people up. If you do not debate a question, if you do not discuss it, if you do everything you can to make it undiscussable, then I'm afraid it's like a sore in the body. It's an untreated wound. It becomes deeper and deeper and more septic until finally it bursts horribly to the surface. And I'm using a deliberately foul metaphor because what's going on now is foul.
Just 2 months after taking office, he was already involved in a large number of scandals and turned society against himself as much as possible. He is authoritarian, runs a two-tier society that suppresses dissent, and gives freedom of action only to those who agree with his opinion and are supporters of the Labour Party. After a quarrel with Elon Musk, Starmer promised to impose controls on social networks to limit the spread of fake news and cancelled the upcoming cancel culture law, which was supposed to protect freedom of speech at universities. His actions to restrict freedom of speech are excessive government interference, and that he is indifferent to the causes of problems in society, instead focusing on waging war against ordinary people with unacceptable views. That's why many people talk about a two-tier society, two-tier police, two-tier media, two-tier politics.
Well, Starmer is a natural authoritarian, and one of the things we need to talk about, he presents himself as a policeman. We've never had a prime minister who presented himself as a policeman before. We had a great prime minister, Robert Peel, who invented our police force, but with the deliberate idea it was not by force, it was not by violence, it wasn't by water cannons, it was by consent. It wasn't neo-military, it wasn't an army of occupation. And Starmer, of course, represents that worst, that, as in so many other ways, continental tendency. And he is every single thing he says, he does, everything that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, does, makes things worse.
Surprisingly, the British police did not recognize the fact that most of the protests were peaceful, and only a small part of the radicals participated in clashes with the police and smashed hotels for illegal migrants. Interestingly, Starmer, while still leader of the opposition in Parliament, showed nothing but approval to the participants in the large-scale riots that Black Lives Matter unleashed in the UK after the death of George Floyd in 2020. Large-scale violence and destruction, dozens of injured police officers, extensive damage to private and municipal property, desecration and destruction of historical monuments did not bother Starmer in any way. Today, illegal migrants are accommodated in hotels and whose maintenance costs £8 million every day, and they commit crimes. The police do not pay attention to this. The only official who appealed to the government to treat the protesters' demands fairly is Donna Jones, the police commissioner. Starmer could have stopped the demonstrators by listening to them and addressed the concerns of ordinary people concerned about rampant migrant crime. Instead, he called the demonstrators extremists. What has Starmer achieved in the short period of his reign? The aggravation of interconfessional, interethnic, racial conflict, imposed punishment for freedom of expression, and the tension within the country only intensified. What do you think about this video? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you.